All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of our 2020 Southeast Collaborative Online Conference. My name is Lauren Clossy, and I will be your host for this session, which discusses building resilience with bibliotherapy. This event is supported through funding from the Library Services and Technology Act through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Before we get started, I have a few things to share with you. This session will be recorded and archived, and a link will be sent out next week with access to the archived session. If there are people watching this webinar with you, we would love to hear about it so that we can have an accurate head count for our records. Please send us an email with the names of the people watching with you, or you can send it to, if you have a state CE person, you can send it to that person as well. You will have an opportunity to submit questions for our presenter. You can type them into the chat area, and make sure that when you are typing into the chat area that you are sending your message to all participants. That way the moderator, the presenter, and our other moderator can see it, and we can kind of work together to make sure all your questions get answered. So right up above the chat where you type your chat, make sure it says send to all participants. You will receive CEUs for this session and the other sessions included in the Southeast Collaborative Conference. Look for a link in your inbox on Friday. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Irania Patterson. She's an award-winning author of children's literature, a storyteller, and an educator who has worked for more than 20 years in the field of outreach programming, arts integrations, and inclusion in education for libraries in the United States, Spain, and Latin America. Thanks so much for being with us today, Irania. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I am very excited about the content and the information that I have to share with you today.
Irania?
Yes.
We are not seeing your screen right now.
Okay, so let's see.
Just click the little box with the arrow pointing up for the share content.
I am. Okay, let me go back here, my screen.
There we go.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
All right, so let me go back to my, did everybody hear me before?
Yes.
Okay, again, I'm sorry, rewind. So I'm very glad that I'm here today. I'm going to share with you my journey as a Biblio Poetry Therapy Facilitator and my journey as an outreach program librarian. And I would like to know, and I know Lauren is going to help me to kind of tell me the answers, but how many of you are already doing outreach in your libraries? Do we have any answers for that, Lauren? Just let me know.
Yes, we have 2 people, 3, 4, 5. Yes. And some are doing a mobile library service.
Perfect, perfect. Have anybody used transformative writing, or are you incorporating any form of art and art of healing arts in your programs already, or are you using bibliotherapy in your program? Is anybody there using transformative writing, expressive arts, and literacy? Is there anybody else already familiar with this?
Someone said mindfulness, and they're considering poetry therapy for their seniors. Another person said yes.
Perfect. And how many of you are kind of skeptical with the term bibliotherapy? Because that is a tricky term, actually. Anybody is skeptical about that term? Nope. Yes.
Nothing as of right now.
Okay, that's good. Good for me to know. Well, so I'm going to share with you what I have, done in the field of poetry bibliotherapy, and I hope this is an interactive webinar. So at any point, please stop and ask me a question. I am a certified applied biblio poetry therapy facilitator. I received this certification with the National Federation and National Association of poetry therapy. And I discovered this association by accident in an ALA conference. I was sharing with librarians my work as an outreach librarian, and somebody said, "Oh, but you're doing bibliotherapy." And I was, no, I don't read the Bible. I didn't even know what was bibliotherapy. So it was interesting to discover the amazing path of poetry bibliotherapy. You can use words as a poetry therapy, journal therapy, therapeutic writing, story therapy. So there are exchangeable terms for the word bibliotherapy. So today, these are our goals. And so these in red are the important kind of the words that we're going to highlight: social emotional development, literacy, therapeutic principles, drawing on your own experience. One thing that I represent in the library institution, one thing that I always clarify when I am doing bibliopoetry therapy program is, again, clarifying the term, and we later are going to define in a more specific way what's bibliotherapy. But I always said I am not a therapist. I use therapeutic principles, and I pull from poetry bibliotherapy techniques. I pull techniques to deliver programs, but I always clarify that I am not a therapist, I am not a counselor. And so in that way, there is no confusion into the fields of mental health, social worker, and a library programmer. But that's very important. But we will talk about that later in a more specific example. So here are the goals, and I am going to spend, I'm trying to move my screen, and I'm not sure why. Okay, here we go. I'm going to spend a little bit of time in this picture. In my experiences in working with an outreach librarian, I felt that my work was incomplete if I don't connect with my audience. And in a way, in 22 years, and I think it's 22 years in working as an outreach program librarian, I have experienced a disconnection between literacy, learning, and emotional health. When working with marginalized communities and trying to apply creative strategies to prepare children and families to become readers and learners, I encountered what I call emotional blocks. And these emotional blocks limit the window of opportunities that we want to open for anyone, for young, for children, for families. In my encounter with families, I saw so many dysfunctional and emotional conflicts that were impossible for me to reach and deliver programs. So I face populations, immigrants, children, people in jail, women that are going through domestic violence, homeless, children who come from dysfunctional families, neglected, abused populations, people who are dealing with grieving, people who are dealing with cancer, with any disease, with chronic disease. So these are so many issues that I face in my work as a program librarian that I cannot ignore. So even if I brought a book club activity, or even if I brought class on, building your resumes, job help, development, digital literacy skill, even if I brought that type of program, I always felt my work was incomplete because they did not really open, or the work was not sustainable until they don't discover the motivation and they don't go into the emotional connection and the awareness of why I am here trying to learn whatever I am teaching to learn. So I realized really that I needed to reconcile the emotional development with literacy and learning. And these emotional wounds that I daily faced, and I will share with you the world that I navigate, are the inspiration for me to learn a greater field, or to pull from bibliotherapy, in order for me to really impact in a very sustainable way the population that I serve. So that is kind of the inspiration of me falling in love with bibliotherapy and falling into the world of bibliotherapy. And I think this picture kind of explained, what does this have to do with my life? And even though, I discovered when I go and try to teach parents how to motivate the children for learning, they always wanted a piece for themselves. What is here for me as well? So with that, I want to tell you the 5 questions: what, where, who, do, what do I do, why do I do it, who do I serve. So I'm going to just briefly tell you, and I think I have already shared with you a little bit of who I am and what I do. I have to design for myself kind of an identity in the world of libraries. And even though, of course, I have a title and of course I have my job description, I have to find, and I challenge you also to find for yourself your soul title, a title that really defines you and I identify you in your role as a program librarian or as whatever you do in the library. So I am a program outreach librarian who fosters transformations and resilience in marginalized communities through transformative expressive writing and therapeutic strategies. Bibliotherapy is a therapeutic strategy. Now, and again, this is a question for yourself. I would love you to open up. What do I do? Why do I do it? Why do I do it? And the same thing, why do you do the job that you're doing? To me, is to spark a real desire for learning and take initiative and change. I have had the privilege, because I've been working 22 years in the library, in library settings, and I have had the privilege of really see changes. Um, Sometimes I do senior programs, and I see the senior that is connected to a family that I served 20 years ago, and through a story time, and this child is already graduating, and I see families, I see all the families coming back and getting empowered through library programs. So I have had the privilege, and I wish, I'm not sure how many of you have had the privilege of seeing and witnessing the change that you foster when you are making an impact. And definitely poetry bibliotherapy and the techniques that I'm about to share with you open up that path. So let me share with you, where do I go and who do I serve? Um, so as you see, these are some of the institutions that I am serving. Organizations like Safe Alliance, and this is an organization that protects women who are going through domestic emotional neglect, domestic violence. And so this is an organization that I work with women who are going through domestic violence. I work with the Carolina healthcare system in the hospitals, especially with the Levine Cancer Institute, as well with the Carolina Breast Friends. It's an organization that they are called the Pink House, and this is breast cancer survivors. So my work in hospitals, and I'm going to briefly share with you in a few minutes, it's been the last 3 to 4 years, it's been huge. And I see a huge opportunity for libraries to be involved in hospitals beyond having a table and deliver information about what we have to offer and doing registration for library cards. We can do programs in hospitals. We can provide our own resources in hospitals. So I'm going to share with you that. The same thing with Novan Health, which is another hospital organization. CMS is Charlotte Mecklenburg School. Alexander Youth Network is children who live there and they are in foster care. These are children that are facing emotional behavior. Mecklenburg County Sheriff Department, this is in jails. Salvation Army, which work with homeless populations, the YMCA, Anuvia, which is chemical dependency, people who are going with, with any form of dependency. So do you see yourself, is anybody here already working with this type of organizations? I want to know if you can just briefly tell me if there is, it doesn't have to be Safe Alliance or hospital, but who is, who is already working in a clinical setting or in a mental health setting or in an educational setting in outreaches. Could you share with me that? I wait until Lauren tells me who can tell me some of the organizations where you are. So something, Lauren, but I couldn't read it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So someone wrote that they are working on programming with their Parks and Rec department, and also funeral homes have approached the library. And someone else wrote that they just left a hospital library position.
Okay, so I am glad you're there, and I am glad that you see the opportunities for libraries to be in this setting. So this is briefly the populations that some of the organizations that I serve, and I am going to go into a specific example of who do I serve, and it's the hospitals. Again, talking with the hospitals. I'm just going to move my. Oops, sorry. Okay. I visited in Raleigh an institution called Duke Integrative Medicine, and it is a spa in the hospital, in the Duke Hospital. And this spa offers transformative writing classes, offers mindfulness, and so more and more the world of medicine and care in general is open to integrate already what we are integrated in libraries. And so we honor the person as a whole. So I was very in shock that in Duke Hospital, there is a whole facility that opened up spaces for writing, for reading, for book clubs, for Reiki. It was just to me a confirmation that the time is ready for us to partner with hospitals. And so kind of the mission of that Duke Integrative is just, the caring relate. I just highlighted in red the last part of this mission of the Duke Integrative Medicine model. It says caring, relationship, honest, open communication, and focused attention empower our patients to fully engage the healing process and embrace lifelong wellness. And we are engaged in lifelong learning, which is part of lifelong wellness. To the point is, right now, we have a huge opportunities to introduce models of like bibliotherapy or writing or, our collections in the world of hospitals. Personally, I go to hospitals. Let me share with you what I do. For example, yesterday I went to the fourth floor in the marrow transplant unit. And these are people who are waiting for a marrow transplant, and they are there for months. And I go room to room, and I introduce myself, as a program librarian, and a volunteer for the hospital, and I'm here to facilitate an experience with you. And I facilitate transformative writing. Sometimes I use visual art. Sometimes I use music. So I borrow from the expressive art world strategies to connect to these people and to connect them to the library services. They all have phones. They all have iPads. They don't even know that we have collections in the library. They don't know we have self-help books. So this is a really perfect opportunity to bring the people who are isolated in hospitals. I also work with children in the Levine Children's Hospitals, and I provide a story therapy program. So it's not only going to read a book for literacy per se, but it is connecting the children and the families coping with waiting, coping with hope and despair. It's beautiful, really. To me, it's been a blessing, the work that I do with the hospitals. And with that, at the end of the sessions, I facilitate group sessions with families who are there. I facilitate one-on-one sessions. I also facilitate people who are in chemotherapy, and I can go specifically for 30 minutes, and I facilitate an experience. And I will share with you that in a second. How could it be? How is that experience? Because I'm pretty sure you will know, like, how do you do that? At the end of the session, I have a picture here. I gave them the medicine prescription. So this is like bottles, the medicine bottle, and I put inside them a poem or a writing piece or a reflection or a prayer or something they have said during the session that brings resilience, that brings them hope, that makes them be stronger. So whatever have happened during that session, Whether it's a poem that I bring, or whether it's something that I write, I put inside those bottles and I give it to them as vitamins. And I say, well, this is your poetry prescription, and you have to read this twice a day. So I behave like the nurse, but I am prescribing something that are words, healing words, and to me, it's so worthy, and I can see I can see the healing that comes from that, and I also can see the connection with the libraries. They are amazed to know that the library is there in a moment of despair, in chemotherapy, for example. I have a video that I want to show you briefly. That kind of, I'm going to cut it after a few minutes. I just want to show you a little bit, because this video give you an example of the things that I do in the hospital, sometimes using music, sometimes using writing, depends on the population that I face. As I am going to look for the video, and are there any comments or questions while I look for the video so far? Anything, Lauren, that I can?
Let's see. If the hospital has a librarian, make connections with them.
The hospital has a librarian, but in my experience working with the Novant Health, Mercy Hospital, and with Carolina Atrium Healthcare, the librarians that are in the hospital are only reference librarians, and they are there to help medical staff. It's more research, like more academic librarians. There is also a librarian in the Levine Cancer Institute, the Children Levine Cancer Institute, and there is a library, an amazing library, but it is just used as a resource. Families come and research on the disease or the sickness. So it's not really designed for programming. So I'm trying to connect that opportunity and see how can this become kind of a more sustainable way that we public libraries can connect with these librarians that are in the hospital. But I don't see the librarians there providing programs. They rely on volunteers or music therapists or transformative writing facilitators, but not librarians doing programs per se. In what I've seen. I'm going to show you the video. We were not sure how the quality of the sound for the video, so if you cannot hear well, please just write, and I will cut the video, because we don't know with this platform how the quality of the sound. So let us know as you watch if you cannot hear it. So here we go.
I came in, she was in a lot of pain and having a hard time.
I'm sure this is about connection, it's about intimacy, it's about building community. It's a very sacred thing. How does it work is, of course, a good question.
How does the reflective art of writing help us? Does poetry heal?
So as a neurologist, and as a physician, and as a scientist, I know this.
This program was made possible by the Whitter Benner Foundation for Poetry, the LEAW Family Foundation, and the Grand Marnier Foundation.
Irania, I think the sound and the picture are lagging.
Okay, so do we stop it?
I think so. We can provide the link to that with the link to the archive, so we can provide it and they can still see it.
Confuse hunger.
So I am going to
and don't wait
stop the
until
video.
you are dead.
And here we go with your. Oh, where are you? Here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going back. So the video basically talk about the work of writers and poetry therapists in hospitals and how those benefit the patients in the hospital. So basically that's the video. It is about 45 minutes video. I was just going to show 4 minutes, but we will send you the link. So continuing with the with the bibliotherapy and the applications and the impact of these techniques. So there are many applications and settings. You have the clinical setting, educational setting, social justice settings, or organizations that work toward that field, and spirituality churches. The applications and the settings is really is very extensive. So I'm going to go into the first goal. This is just the beginning. Now I'm going to jump into our first goal, is to better understand why do we librarians need to understand the connection of social emotional development and literacy in an outreach capacity. And it goes back into the idea of self-awareness. And I love this definition of self-awareness because it also connects you as a program librarian, defining the reason of why are you there, what is in you, what is in yourself that makes you provide the programs that you offer. And in a way, if you are not aware of that, you cannot really connect to the population that you are trying to connect. So everything really starts with the self-awareness moment. And I love the last part of this definition. It says, until you are aware in the moment of, until you are aware in the moment of your thoughts, emotions, words, and behavior, you will have difficulty making changes in the direction of your life. I think it's until you're not aware, this is what it says. So the importance of us connecting to self-awareness is huge. And so the question is why librarians are involved in the business of building resilience. And here, in a way, it goes back into the gap in literacy, educational, and social emotional development. We can teach our participants the skills of building resilience, and we can teach our participants emotional skills. These emotional skills have to be acquired for our audience to really have the motivation that they need to learn, that they need to change. So I love this, quote by Plato, that all learning has an emotional base. So when I teach, provide any program, it is interesting because the population that is there, if they are not aware of why they are there learning and what is the motivation, the emotional base on that motivation, the impact of my work is incomplete. But when I connect to their motivation and I actually help them to discover the motivation for them to learn how to do their resume, for them to learn how to read better to their children, for them to be there to learn how to use any digital resources, if they are connected to that emotional base, it will be, that motivation will be revealed, and that motivation will foster learning, and of course, the motivation for reading. So it is really very connected to the emotional learning. So emotional learning experience awakes the motivation to act. And what is it that we want? We want the act of wanting to learn. And when you see in your population that they really want to learn, and then when you see that you are fostering that wanting to learn, your job is going to be complete. Of course, this is not me coming with this theory or anything like that. I am not saying anything new. Everything is actually involved in the theory of emotional intelligence, and the motivation to act come from our feelings and emotions. So that actually come from Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence Theory, and his book. And one thing also, as librarian, is that in our own libraries, we need to be to develop emotional intelligence. It says that emotional intelligence is a cost-effective management imperative, and feedback is the currency of emotional intelligence in management. So later I will tell you that I developed training for librarians in how bibliotherapy helps them first connect to themselves in the workplace, so they walk through the shoes of their participant. If you do not walk through the shoes, if you do not really develop empathy, understanding the mind of your participant, the connection is mediocre. So developing emotional intelligence in our own departments, inside our libraries, is crucial in management, and is crucial for your, if you are a manager, for your staff to be more effective. So how do I do this? And here, it's really going back to the second goal about learning in theory what is bibliotherapy and what are the therapeutic principles of bibliotherapy and transformative writing. Just to let you know, when I promote or do marketing bibliotherapy, I don't use the term bibliotherapy because it's kind of not really, people may not understand that. So I use transformative writing, I use writing to heal, I use expressive art and writing in a therapeutic way. And but let's just go into the principles of what is bibliotherapy. I can send you later, a whole bibliography of this history of bibliotherapy. Where can you find information about learning about this field? But basically here you can see, what is the term bibliotherapy. I am just going to read the last two paragraphs that said bibliopoetry therapy is the strategic use of literature with the purpose of healing. It involves the use of language arts in a therapeutic capacity. I pull again from other disciplines. I pull from music, I pull from poetry, I pull from drama sometimes, and I connect that to a literary piece. I connect that to books. I move our self-help books a lot. It is really a one-time shot, because when I provide sessions for bibliotherapy, the first intention is to connect to people, is to open the trust to people, is to motivate people and touch this, the self, touch them to the self, go into the self. What is the reason that you're here? Why are you part of this program? And after that, then my job is to connect it to resources and to connect it to a path of growth. So this is bibliotherapy. Again, this is just theory of bibliotherapy. You can read this later because the presentation is going to be provided. I don't want to stop into the, the theory of this. But these are some of the benefits of using poetry bibliotherapy strategies. And as you read these, these are emotional benefits. I am pretty sure that you can think in somebody that can benefit from relieving feelings of isolation. I am pretty sure you can, right now, you can think in somebody, whether it's in your life, a person in your life, or whether it's a person that you're serving in the library, that you can think in somebody that can be benefit by gaining comfort and reassurance, by finding hope, by being motivated to act differently. So these are, some of the benefits for bibliotherapy. And increased self-awareness, clarification of emerging values, developing one's ethnic cultural identity. I also work a lot with immigrants and ESL families, and especially ones that are coming newcomers, and it's the impact of identity in the finding that new self. It's greater than the need to find a school, the need to find, it is the issue of identity is huge, especially in immigrants. So bibliotherapy has been a great tool. And I tell you, I of course, I am from Venezuela, I speak Spanish, but I work with immigrants from many countries, languages that I don't speak. And the arts and poetry is the language that I use to connect with this population. So the opportunities are huge. So again, these are some benefits, cognitive benefits as well. And interesting to say that I have discovered when I work with families and children, especially when we're working with families who have preschool children, and we're trying for the parents to help their children to read, what I see is many of these parents do not have the skills that we are asking them to teach to their children: comprehension, the metaphoric thinking, the connection with symbols. There, it's interesting to say that, and it's not at all, no, this is not everybody, and I don't want to put anybody down to saying this, but we are missing sometimes parents that are not cognitively, or they're not cognitively ready to even foster what we want them to foster to their children. And bibliotherapy, because of the symbolic aspect of it, with words and images and the integration of concepts and prediction, it fosters what we want in regards of learning and literacy. I do professional development, what I call it professional development retreat for librarians that I call the Story Therapy Lab for a connected librarian. And in here, I help librarians to, as I said, to connect to themselves and to walk through the shoes of their own participants. And in this retreat, or in this professional development workshop, librarians learned in more details the principles and techniques of bibliopoetry therapy. These are actually some of the goals for the Story Therapy Lab. Learn how to structure a program for challenging populations using bibliotherapy, learn how to identify the therapeutic features of stories and poems, and learn how to facilitate the story therapy experience using literature. So in this way, we practice really what is called cultural humility, because you apply the principles to yourself first, to your life first, and then you can see how can you apply that to your clientele. I believe if you don't walk first with the shoes of your clients and develop the empathy that it requires, you cannot really connect to your population. It's in the emotional connection that everything starts. So here are some modules that I provide with the Story Therapy Lab. I talk about emotional education, self-knowledge, sociability. We can go in modules as relationships, choosing partners, relationship skills, relationships at work. So these are just, some of the modules that I teach during the Story Therapy Lab. My intention today is to spark the desire to learn about these, because in an hour, we really cannot go in detail of all the mechanisms of using bibliopoetry therapy. So now I am going to, in a way, go to goal number 3, and I am going to facilitate an experience, and this is going to be really short, about what is it, for example, what does a session look like? How do you draw from people's experience before you connect to them? In this small session that I'm going to kind of, I give you an example. There, you look for these 3 components that are part of the bibliotherapy process. One is the receptive, prescriptive component, which is one of the segments in bibliotherapy. The other is the expressive and creative component. And the third component is the symbolic, ceremonial. And so you will see these 3 components that are part of the bibliotherapy process. So we're going to become a participant. And finally, after all this talking, I am kind of give you a small example of what do I do, for example, in a hospital setting, when I walk into a room, or when I provide a group session with families who are dealing with a person with cancer, for example. So I'm going to just kind of give you an example. So far, are there any comments or questions? I'm going to just briefly stop here and let you have some part here.
We do have a comment and a question. So one person said, I guess we can all use the therapy ourselves in libraries with the ever-shrinking staff, more programs being imposed. It creates tensions among staff, but we need experts. Mm-hmm. And another person asked, when do you do the retreat?
It is, I have my email. I generally, I don't have a set time. It's like if you, like, for example, next week, I am going to have a retreat with nurses and medical staff. And it's more applicable to people in the medical field. But just get back to me with that. My email is there. And so you can just get back to me with that. And the retreats are more into the time that the library can provide that space. Sometimes it's during your professional development time. So, and then it's true, the other comment, you need experts. And I, with the Story Therapy Lab retreat, I completely clarify what is your role as a librarian, what is the role of a counselor, and what is the role of a social worker. There is, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term whole person librarianship, which is kind of and it's very popular in Washington, in California, New York, and it is a connection with librarians and social workers. So we librarians, through story therapy, I have discovered that how can you become an expert of the material that you bring? How do you become an expert of the books that you're suggesting? And how do you become an expert of making this piece of literature very applicable to the clientele that you're serving? So I extremely agree with that person. And there is an ethic code that I follow, and it is in the kit of in the material for the story therapy, where that I cannot go here. I have to refer this person to here. But we can become experts of what we know using bibliotherapy. Okay, so we're ready to do a little bit of an exercise. In generally, when I start a poetry therapy program, I ask the audience, to breathe and kind of like a mindfulness exercise. So I'm going to ask you to close your eyes very briefly, and I would like you to take a big breath. Release any areas of tension you might have at this time. And I want you to breathe into these areas and release any tension. Begin to meditate on the idea of a new opportunity for your life. Is there anything new happening today in your life? Meditate on that. Now breathe again and think about that new window, an opportunity, a door, a person that you just met that is bringing a new insight for you. And with that, come back to me, open your eyes, and I would like you to look at this picture. And as you see this picture, I would like you to find a spot where you can place yourself. Where would you like to be in this picture? Did you place yourself in the sun? Did you place yourself in the water? Where did you place yourself? And Lauren, I would like to know, where did they place themselves? If they can write, where are you in that picture?
Okay, someone wrote on a float,
Mm-hmm.
in the water on a boat,
Mm-hmm.
in the water under the sun, to the left on the land, right in front of the sun.
Mm. Now, why did you place yourself there? Can you think about that? What does it make you feel to be in that spot?
Natalie writes peaceful. Relaxing. Relaxing in the sun.
Okay.
And someone wrote, I like the combination of the cool water and warm sun. Serenity, watching the sunset near the water.
Perfect. Who would you bring in it? Or you prefer to stay there by yourself?
Most people are saying all alone.
All alone. I relate to that.
Someone wrote their spouse, their dog,
Good.
their
Do you
best friend.
Mhm. For a moment like this? And what can you do to create in your home or in your office or wherever you are right now, a moment like this? Is that possible?
Someone wrote, look out the window. Another person wrote that it's not possible.
Good.
Someone else said, my goal this month is to create a peaceful environment. This is, someone wrote, this is really grieving for me right now because today is my birthday and I was wanting to do this for real at some point today. Another person wrote, I keep pictures of loved ones and favorite places at my desk. Another person said, screensavers, yogic breathing.
Right. My last question from this picture. Do you think this is the beginning of the day, or you think this is a sunset?
Some people say sunset, some people say could be either.
What if this is the beginning of the day? And this is exactly what you're saying, what you're seeing right now. What would you do with that view? Somewhat concerned. Why would you be concerned? We speak positive things into existence. I can see some of your answers. And of course, I won't have time. This is a brief example, very brief example. So from there, this is a very subliminal way for me to connect to people. I don't ask, how long have you been in the hospital? I don't ask about any of their life's situations. I don't go into personal issues. This is, for example, a visual example that allows me to see their stage of being. Where are they? And of course, my goal and everything I have is written in lesson plans. I can share with you all of these lesson plans. I have hundreds of lessons planned divided by thing, but I want to bring them into the idea of a beginning, an opportunity, something new. So after I provide this icebreaker exercise, I jump with the questions, of course, that I just bring some questions in relation to the icebreakers, and these are some of the questions. We spend probably 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, believe it or not, even though some people say, oh, this population doesn't want to speak, or these are very quiet, or they're very private. I am telling you, the experience in using arts to pull people's emotions, to me, it's amazing. They are so open to talk about memories, to talk about what does it make you feel. There is a lot of connection, as you know. I am preaching to the choir, but arts is an amazing tool to connect first. Then after that, for example, I bring a poem. This is an example of a poem. I am going to read it with my Spanish accent. And sometimes I have a lot of the poems translated to Spanish as well. And I have a lot of material that is culturally relevant to the population that I serve, depending on the population. But here we got this poem. So here we go. For a new beginning. In and out of the way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you wheeled yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered. Hear the waves of turmoil rise and relent. Wondered, would you always live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. This is written by John O'Donoghue, and it's from the book To Bless the Space Between Us. After I read this, if they're capable, sometimes they cannot read it depending on the situation, but I ask them to read it again. We can read this collectively. And I began to ask questions, for example, for you. Questions as, is there anything here for you? Are there any words here that resonate with your life right now? And I'm actually opening the question for you right now. Is there anything here for you? What words pull you in? And I wait Lauren to tell me what they're answering. Nothing? Yes.
Someone wrote, still unable to leave what you had outgrown.
Mm-hmm.
And seduction of safety and gray promises of sameness really resonate right now.
Mm-hmm.
Another person wrote, it makes me very relaxed. It watched you play with this seduction of safety.
So from the feedback that I receive, generally, I walk through different ideas here. Safety, for example, I can ask, can you describe something that makes you feel safe right now? What is safety for you? There is so much in this poem, there is the seduction. Somebody said the seduction of safety. Why is safety so seductive? Why is inviting you? But there is something about, stepping out into a new ground. How does it feel to go into a new ground? What is right now that new ground? What ideas do you have of that new place? There's so much here that brings conversation and that applies to themselves. So after we have a brief conversation on what is here for them, I ask them to write. So they write about, I have questions in relation to the poem. I can say, well, write about anything that you're thinking right now. Write about a beginning that is quietly forming. What is that beginning? Write about safety. Write about, there's so much that you can pull. And again, this is part of a lesson plan. So I have all the 20 questions that you can ask in relation to specifically beginning, leaving something, breaking a pattern, taking risk in something new. So there is a lot here you can bring. Then these are basically the sections that the poetry therapy facilitation incorporate. There is the entry part where is the picture. I am here in this picture or in this piece, or the entry part is kind of a, I am here. Then there is an engaged part in where you know, I am here and the literature reaches me. It's the recognition of the self in the process. So still, when I ask questions on why are you bringing somebody with you, or when I ask you questions on, do you think this is the beginning or the ending? In a way, I am still provoking that engagement part. Then the involvement part is when you really start writing and you think in quietness, and then you really is when the literature touches you. When in the incorporated part is when we share. After we write, we share. Some of us don't share. There are rules and guidelines in when it's group therapy. But when it is not group, just if you don't want to share, you don't have to share. But in the sharing is so much richness, because what you say spark another person's idea, and this is part of group dynamics. And there is a whole learning curriculum with group dynamics that I provide. And then the last part is the initiative. After we share, then we connect that to your life. So what are you going to do with this? What is your new beginning? Whether I know they're coming here because they want to learn something, but they're stuck because they have depression, then we actually adapt that into what is it exactly that you're going to do? What is your accountability here? What is your commitment? What is the contract that you are writing to yourself after going through this experience? So these are really the parts that are part of the bibliotherapy process.
Irania?
Yes.
We have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, so basically this is kind of an example of bibliotherapy. In the story therapy lab, I connect more the connection with, I do the connection with the books and the poems, and in regards with the population is more connected. We talk about the strategic choice of materials, considering the background, the gender, the culture, and how do you read that from an icebreaker. There are plenty of icebreakers where you can actually set yourself, where you are and what type of population you're facing. Of course, the thematic and the theme and the style of the material is extremely important in what you're bringing. And here are just briefly examples of things that you have to consider when you are bringing materials applied to your population. I am going to send Lauren also another handout with resources on books that have been wonderful in the world of emotional growth and bibliotherapy. And these are some websites that I have used that have plenty of material that have helped me in being a better poetry bibliotherapy facilitator. And at the end is really this quote: "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." And Theodore Roosevelt said that. And so I think in bibliotherapy, it is a really amazing way for people to know that you do care about them. And that opens up for them to really be ready for whatever you are teaching them or whatever program you are there to provide. With that, I will be quiet. And I may know that it's like 30 seconds for you to ask any comments or questions. Lauren, I have finished my presentation, so please reach me. My contact information is in the first slide. I would love to give you more feedback, specifically tap into a question that you have. I know we don't have time, but please, my email is in the first slide, which is Irania Patterson at gmail.com. It's right here. I'm going back quickly, but it's right here, okay?
We do have one question from someone who asked about the certification process for what you do. How do you become certified? What does that look like?
Yes. Go to the National Association of Poetry Bibliotherapy website, and I can facilitate that. And there is a process that you apply, and they will assign you to a supervisor, which is generally a doctor, or a mentor, or it's a person that has. And then I did 470 hours of supervision, and I did have to go back to school and took psychology. So there is a serious formal process to become a poetry therapy facilitator. But I'll be glad to give you more detail when you reach me through my email or through Lauren, whatever. I'm very open to share with you the process.
Well, thank you so much today, Irania, for being here and for presenting today. We've all walked away, I think, with something new that we can use, and either personally or professionally. I really enjoyed the exercise. If any of you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact us via the conference website, or you can contact Irania personally with your questions. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on this presentation, and we would appreciate it if you could complete that and give us your feedback. The last page of the survey will also give information about certification credits, CEU credits that you can earn. So thanks again, and be sure to join us at 1:30 today for the next concurrent sessions, which are Decoding Microaggressions in the Library Environment and Team RA, Readers Advisory for Everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.